Today we're watching 2001: A Space Odyssey. What did you think?
I give this movie an 8 out of 10. The pros. The pros are the foresight, the prediction. This is sci-fi. And sci-fi imagines a world that could be, and 2001 got a lot of right. A lot of stuff that came up in this movie, if you compare it to what happened today, yep, good predictions. So there's the foresight, there's the vision of what the future could be. This movie captures it. Back in the day in 1968, they had some cutting edge practical effects, I guess, visual effects. And this would have been stunning, just been like captivating. Like, what am I seeing if you were there in the movie theater? And for that, I give it significant credit. The slow pacing of this movie is, well, it's a contrast. It's a sharp contrast to what you see nowadays, where it's like movies are cut, really attention shortened for an attention shortened audience. So the slow pacing of this movie is quite unique, and I still think it's worth it to watch it in 2026. Sit down on your couch, get your snacks, and like really settle into the vibe of a slow paced science fiction. Very good. For these reasons, I like this movie. The cons, however, in this movie, it was really four movies compressed into one. I think it could have been stretched out and really fleshed out and to have more description into what's going on. So the four movies was the monolith section with the pre-hominids, maybe hominids, I'm not a biologist, with the monkeys, with the apes. And then there was the moon mission section, which I think had a lot more meat in the bone. There could have been a lot more stuff there. And then the HAL section with the AI, I think that could have been really blown up to have some rich, just deep drama in there. And then at the very end, there's that weird wormhole stuff, which I didn't quite understand. And overall, this felt like it could have been four movies. And at the end, I wanted more HAL. That was really the dramatic part. I think when people talk about 2001: A Space Odyssey, they talk about the monolith with the apes somehow, and they talk about HAL. The rest of it, I'm not really sure it needed to be there. Although back in the time in 1968, the artistry, filmmaking, something like this. Overall, good movie. Also, I don't understand the ending, and I'm not really sure about the beginning. They both do add to the vibe of the movie, but I'm not really sure what the plot points were of both the beginning and the ending. And then finally, my metric for scientific fiction, sci-fi, my metric about this scientific question where there's a kernel, there's a question that initiates the movie. Of like, what if the world was a little bit different in this way, and then the consequences then propagate. This movie is a bit loose on that. So it's science fiction in that we're envisioning the future of what could happen, but it really feels like there are four different movies instead of one cohesive story. Maybe I'm too picky, but that's my feeling from when I watched this movie. Overall, good movie. Good movie, worth the watch, even in 2026. I think the topics are still relevant today. Incredible. And I think go sit down and watch it. Have a good time with your friends and family. What did you think?
I give it a 9 out of 10. And I pretty much agree with everything you said, that this is an 8 out of 10, but I give it an extra point because it was made in 1968. Like, holy cow. In terms of the visuals, like, holy cow, how did they do this in 1968? And I can imagine myself in a movie theater in the Cold War during the space race, and I go see 2001, and I'm just, wow, the future, this is crazy.
Hell yeah.
So we see now, like watching it in 2025, that there's a lot of movie elements that have been pulled from 2001. And so since it's the first to do it, and in that time period, I got to give it an extra point. I don't think it's a perfect movie, though. That's why I don't give it a 10 out of 10. Most of the stuff that just blew me away that this was made in 1968 were like the set design, like the sets. Just, the spaceship look, the modern design of the space stations and everything. It just felt, while they used their imagination to really feel like what the future would be. And there's not that scientific kernel, but I do think a lot of the science is right, like the spinning space stations and realistic time durations to missions to Jupiter, and kind of realistic, I don't know, predictions about how AI is going to go in the future, different things like that. So I think that's pretty good. I mean, I'm not just pretty good, like really good. And the cultural impact, just
true.
I could just imagine the impact this had on the culture at the time. It's just, wow. the visuals. I mean, in the space race, thinking about if we're just going to the moon now, 1968, where will we be in 2001? I mean, Jupiter, it's got to be a piece of cake. We're not there.
That's right.
Right now. But at that time, it was like, that's a no-brainer. We'll be there, no problem, in 2001. We're talking 30 years in the future, not a problem. So, yeah, and then the cinematic experience itself, just on the big screen in 1968 with the sound, it would have been amazing, because the TVs at the time in your home were like mostly probably black and white, very low resolution with terrible audio. To see this on a big screen, mind-blowing. And then the world building, just the world building was great. Imagining things in the future, the new tech, the new spaceships, the new everything. I don't know, they did a good job. There's this big feeling of the future. So lots of good. A couple of bad things. I like the slow pacing, but sometimes it's a little too slow, I think. Could have been sped up a little bit, especially towards the end of the movie and at the beginning of the movie. Not a huge fan of the apes and monkeys scene. Felt like dragged on a little bit. And then at the end, where we're like doing all kinds of weird, like wormhole, time bendy, who knows what. I just dragged on it too long. I thought that could have been condensed. And I don't think the ending makes much sense. I mean, I can go off with these interpretations, but I really don't know what it means. I think that's kind of a nick to the movie. And then this is kind of a storytelling thing. Like, I thought the transition from the HAL storyline to the Jupiter and wormhole storyline was a little abrupt. Could have gotten another 5 minutes in there to see how we get from one to the other. So overall, with all that said, for me, 9 out of 10. All right, let's get into it.
You know, I will say about the ape section at the beginning of the movie. In 1968, how did they get all those apes, chimps, I guess it would have been chimps then? How did they get them to act like that? Oh, I don't know how they got them to coordinate like that.
Were they chimps or were they people in suits? Were they chimps? I can't. It wasn't just obviously men in suits, right? Was it? I don't know.
Watch 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure. I think it's men in suits. Okay.